You know, Don, these
What's that?
Flashback Friday shows take me back to a time of a cigar smoke filled arena where
You
men
ain't
were
lying.
wearing suits and you were putting your beers on the edge of the ring apron, watching your favorite grapplers go.
This is one of
Folks,
my favorites. One of my all-time
one of
favorites.
your all-time favorites.
It
Well,
really
folks,
is.
can I introduce the show first?
I hope you do, goddammit.
Folks, welcome to the Squared Circle Maniacs channel. We are the Squared Circle Maniacs. Well, we're two-thirds of the Squared Circle Maniacs. This is Flashback Fridays. And aloha to Larry the Hitman. Aloha. Pat Green, what's going on, Pat? What we've got going on today is a Flashback Friday where we take apart and look back fondly on some of the best angles of professional wrestling history. History, that is. Nothing that you saw last week or last month. We go back decades. In fact, we're going back right now, I believe, Don, to the year 1988, if I'm not mistaken,
You are correct, sir.
to the era of the Jim Crockett-owned, Tony Schiavone, David Crockett calling it, Jim Ross calling it, NWA, before
This was the
WCW came into existence.
the last year Jim Crockett actually owned the company. He would later sell
Yes,
it
indeed.
because of bad business decisions, bad booking ideas, and all kinds of just ungodly bad financial management. We're going to
Hiring
buy
too many-
jets.
Hiring too many people, paying for hotel rooms, paying
Parties.
bar tabs, paying for parties, private jets, all that good stuff. It sounds familiar? Maybe.
I mean, just it
I'm not
was
going to
just.
mention his name.
I still to this day don't understand how you screw this up because this was so good. This was so good. This is why people become fans of wrestling. This whole angle, just the whole thing, the whole setup with the Four Horsemen.
Well, Don, there was a company that started in 2019 that was so good, and it was mishandled. And look at it now. Look at the state of it now. But
Not
anyway,
talking
let's
about it. Not
we're
touching
going to be concerned with 1988. Barry Windham and Barry Windham and Lex Luger were the
An
tag
icon.
team champions.
Icons in the industry.
Icons
And
in the
they were-
industry.
They were tag team champions because Lex Luger refused to step out of the bunkhouse stampede when it was the last Four Horsemen in the ring. J.J. Dillon, Arn Anderson, Tully, all in the ring with Lex Luger, and they all agreed they would step out except Lex Luger to let J.J. Dillon win a match. That was the whole point of it. And he refused. Lex Luger refused to do the job, would not get out of the ring, and they ended up turning on the Fourth Horseman at the time and kicking his ass in front of all those people in the stadium. And that was the beginning of the end of Lex Luger and the Four Horsemen. It was undoubtedly the start of one of the greatest face turns in history. Made Lex Luger, who was already a star, a superstar. Put him on that world championship level. He had the body of a Greek god, and he pointed at you like this. When I tell you I'm coming in, that thumb's getting extended because I don't know what I'm doing. And yes, Chris, Lex Luger was their version of Hulk Hogan.
I was just going to say that. He was either they were betting the farm, betting the house on Lex Luger to take off like Hulk Hogan did, and he just didn't have the he couldn't connect with the fans. He actually in that part of his career, believe it or not, the man actually he grew to despise the fans over the years. He regarded them as being too intrusive for some reason. But back then, people believed it. That was all kayfabe back then. At the Clash of the Champions, they won the NWA World Tag Team Championships from Arn and Tully. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Half of the Four Horsemen. Now, were they called the Twin Towers? Were they an iteration of a...
No, they were not.
So this Wikipedia entry that I'm reading right now was wrong.
They were not. I never heard them called the Twin Towers.
Here's first line of the 1988 year when they won the tag team titles. In early 1988, Windham reunited with Luger, and together they formed a tag team called the Twin Towers.
Yeah, I never heard that ever. If they were, that's news to me, buddy.
That smells like Wikipedia horse shit to me. But
it really does.
Be that as it may, let's not digress. Let's move forward. A few weeks later, on April 20th, in Jacksonville, Florida, where a lot of bad things originate. I'm not going to say anything else.
It was one of those things where if you weren't watching it live, and you could go back and watch it now and watch all the shit that happened afterwards.
Sure.
And it is amazing to watch how they told this story. So Barry Windham gets in the ring. And this is, 10 minutes into the match. I watched it back. I watch this back 3 times a day. And then I watch the shows after this to make sure I kept up with the storyline and where this was going. Barry Windham is in the ring and he's fighting for his life. And Lex Luger's outside and gets posted by Tully Blanchard. Right? Cut back to the ring. They cut back outside of the ring a minute later. And Lex has got blood pouring down his face. Great angle. He's been knocked stupid. He doesn't know where he is. And Barry Windham's getting the hell beat out of him in the middle of the ring.
And as the guy who they traded off tags, Blanchard and Anderson did.
Right.
Whoever was not in the ring was outside behind the ref's back because the ref and by the way, the ref was the great Teddy Long.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable, right?
I saw that Jerry curl and I said, that guy looks familiar to me. And that was Teddy Long hanging on to the last vestiges of his hair. And he looked like a shaved down Cat Williams. That's what he looked like.
And J.J. Dillon's
was distracted,
giving him the boot every chance he got.
Gave him the boot right in the ribs. One stiff shot, it looked like, and he was being bounced off the ring apron, bounced off the metal barricade. It was the old bicycle rack type barricades. And Luger was getting really banged up out there.
And the
guy couldn't get to his feet.
It did look great. And Barry goes to his corner once and puts his hand up. And there's nobody to help him out. And you hear JJ on the outside of the ring. I told you he'd bail on you. I told you he wouldn't be there when you needed him. And the commentators picked up on it. Jim Ross is at his absolute best in this.
It was Ross and Schiavone.
Ross and Schiavone. And they're picking up on it, and they're telling the story, and they got you hook, line, and sinker. And you hear them say, what the hell does that mean? Did I hear him say, I told you he wouldn't be there? What's going on? What does that mean? I don't know. What is happening right now? And Barry has to get back in there, and he starts going again. And another minute or two passes, and he comes back to get the tag. And Lex Luger still stumbled down the floor bleeding. Nowhere to be found. And they bring him back again, and they're double teaming him. And you're sitting there hearing JJ the whole time screaming at him from the outside, I told you he would bail on you, Barry Windham. I told you he would bail on you. Now, this is the first time you've watched it probably in a long time. I watch this probably once a year. It's one of my favorite angles. Watching it back because you haven't seen it so long, your thoughts on just this up to this point, not anything after.
I'm going to give you my thoughts on the entire production as it played out. First thing first, Schiavone and Ross, tremendous play-by-play.
They were great
color commentators. Right?
I mean, just great.
Tremendous. You couldn't really tell who was color and who was play-by-play because they were trading off back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The grainy camera work, the grainy broadcast, pre-high definition camera work, it brought a little warm, fuzzy feeling to my heart. It really did because it was so low fidelity. It brought back memories of watching wrestling on those Thursday or Friday nights, or Tuesday nights for that matter, whenever they would run a Clash of the Champions on TBS. It was fantastic.
You know what? Those Saturday night shows and Sunday night shows, I never missed them. I was tuned in at 6:05 every week because sometimes you got 2 hours, sometimes you got one because of baseball. But I was tuned in, Buddy Rowe. I was tuned in.
Absolutely. And how good was Barry Windham as a ring technician? He was fantastic.
God, he looked amazing. He was absolutely everything you could want in your world heavyweight champion. He was the guy. He was just the guy.
Anderson and Blanchard, 2 men, 1 mind. It's like they knew what the other one was going to do. Yeah, and the other guy played off of, he brought the action outside the ring while the other guy was putting the boots to whoever the opponent was in the ring. He was in as I call it, the Ricky Morton spot, where you're just selling. You're getting your ass kicked and selling, which is something that they don't know how to do nowadays.
Nobody sells
I would
nothing.
say anybody who's coming up, any young man in any company, should take a look at this particular match for a crash course in selling. Have to sell moves. You don't have to leave your feet. You don't have to fly through the air. I don't think anyone actually came off a turnbuckle
No one did come off a turnbuckle in this
No.
match. I can confirm that.
No one jumped through the ropes. No one jumped over the ropes.
There was no suicide Tosapia Pusu or any of that bullshit.
Afghanistan didn't have any of that.
Exactly.
One guy was trying to climb through the ropes to help his partner, but he couldn't quite get to his feet. Because every time he got to his feet, beat to hell. Fighting off two men outside the ring. And it was how good was J.J. Dillon?
He was so good. So underrated. Him as a manager, people forget how great he was at getting that mic and just being the front man for that team.
Dude,
he was the perfect front man.
What a mind for the business of professional wrestling.
And he never let the faces get a hold of him unless it was an absolute must moment, like a War Games type deal.
Unless it needed heat.
Yes.
Super heat, supernova heat. And then he would be beaten on the face behind a ref's back the whole night. And when that face got a hold of him, the whole place would erupt.
I mean,
didn't happen in this particular match. No one got a hold of him in this match because the story was Windham was getting his ass kicked and his best pal wasn't there.
And was down and out. And so finally, Lex Luger finally crawls back up to the ropes, bleeding. And Barry Windham doesn't even let him get to his feet, grabs his arm, brings it over and slaps his hand, picks him up and body slams him in the middle of the ring, and Jim Ross loses his mind on the call.
That was great attention to detail.
Great attention to detail. I mean, he was so good.
He tagged him in before he body slammed him. Schmucks nowadays would have just body slammed him and expected the other guy from the other team to pin that man. But Windham knew he was the legal man, so he had to make Lex the legal man. So he tagged him, brought him over, body slammed him, and walked out.
No, he body slammed him. He body slammed him, and then he lariated him.
That's true. He did do that.
And then he gave up the 4-finger salute. I'm out, 4 fingers, and walked out. And Arn Anderson's like, what is going on? We have been beating on this guy for the last 15 minutes.
And JJ left those two to pin Luger, and he followed Windham to the locker room. He had a hold of one shoulder while patting him on the other shoulder from behind as he's walking through the crowd. And Windham turned and looked back at the ring and gave the 4-finger salute again.
Yep.
And he's gone.
Chris wants to know, who do you prefer, Tully or JJ as Tully's manager? I prefer JJ.
You mean Baby Doll or JJ? Baby Doll was...
she was there. That's all I can say.
She was just there. She was useless.
She was there.
J.J. Dillon ran roughshod over any manager in the NWA or in the southern area.
Except one.
Except Jim Cornette, of course.
Except Jim Cornette. Because that was a heat magnet, boy.
But Cornette was a comedic heel for a lot of it.
But he could also get you fired up by talking trash about you. I mean, he would introduce that team. Here is the greatest tag team in the world, My Midnight Express. And every time he got to talking about Mama sending him money, people would get fired up. So this was so big because it was Barry Windham abandoning not only his tag team champion, but saying, to hell with them belts. I'm done with you, Lex. I'm not only going to give up the tag team championship, I'm going to join the faction you're at war with now. Because what you just did to me was so wrong. You couldn't get your dead ass up out of the ring and get back up on the apron. You couldn't get up from the barricade and you let me get whooped by these guys. Well, damn it, that's enough of that. I'm getting out of here with them. And at the end of the show, it closed with them giving Barry Windham a new 4 Horsemen jacket, putting it on and said, we had it custom made just for you. Gets in the limo with Ric Flair and all the 4 Horsemen, and they drive off into the night. And it was perfect. And the next week, everybody wanted him to explain himself. They ran this match, on all of their shows for like the next 2 weeks. Like they ran it in full. It was such a big moment.
Well, you left out the one segment where the Midnight Rider came in.
Out of nowhere. Just suddenly.
After that match.
People forget back then, faces joined faces to help beat off the heels. And the heels joined together to beat up the faces. The heel. To beat up on the heels.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. It could have been a whole different show.
Well, we're not going back to the Ron Jeremy segment, I can tell you that much.
Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Nikita Koloff, and Sting and the Midnight Rider came out to check on Lex Luger because they left him in a puddle of piss in the ring. He was just out cold. Anderson and Blanchard took a powder, and the Midnight Rider, who, by the physique and the voice, he was doing nothing to hide it. And the list, baby. He had a full face mask on and gloves, by the way, and a bodysuit. And that was Dusty Rhodes as a Midnight Rider because he lost a loser leave town match.
No, he had been suspended. He had been suspended by
I thought that's
by
right.
Crockett. He got suspended by Crockett for beating him up after a match because he overturned the championship. And the title was vacated after that, the U.S. title.
So the Midnight Rider went back into the locker room. He found the Heels locker room. The cameraman followed him backstage. And he walked into the Heels locker room, and it was a who's who of the greatest bad guys in professional wrestling. Everybody was in there. Every bad guy was in there, managers included. Midnight Express, all those guys. And the Midnight Rider grabbed Windham. He had his back to the door. He spun him around and asked him, "What are you doing? What the hell's wrong with you?" Blah, blah, blah. You really couldn't make out everything that was said because they all piled on the Midnight Rider.
Well, let me ask you, did the fact that you couldn't make out everything add to it so it wasn't so clean? It felt like a fight moment all of a sudden.
It felt like a reporter out at a crime scene watching a riot break out. You know how like a news reporter would be there with a camera? That's what it reminded me of. The audio wasn't the best because people were screaming. It wasn't clear. Like I said, I had that lo-fi standard definition camera work, and it was fantastic. And the story there was, we got the Midnight Rider. He's on the ground. We're going to take the mask off.
And they ripped it off.
And Dr. Death, and it might have been Sting, ran in in that dressing room, in that locker room, and covered the Midnight Rider to protect him so you couldn't see his face.
Because he was suspended for 120 days, and he'd have been fired if they'd have caught him.
And he got his big barrel ass out of there. But it was not Dusty Rhodes who played the Midnight Rider. I have good authority. It was Bill Balky who played the Midnight Rider. A guy named Beerman told me that. He also gave me this cigar.
Good for you. It was so the next week, right? They show up. And Barry Windham wants to congratulate Arn and Tully on their magnificent win to regain their world tag team. Just a total heel. Just a total shithead when he comes back out there. And here it goes. J.J. Dillon leads everybody into what was going on backstage that you didn't see, where he was telling him, I was telling Barry he would eventually bail on him. I said, Barry, Lex Luger's a great athlete, but he's not fully committed to wrestling. There's going to come a time where he's not going to be there for you. Why is he getting all of the TV contract deals? Why is he getting the Hollywood laurels? Why is he getting asked to be in commercials? Where's your money, Barry? Why aren't you getting the same offers? And eventually he listened to me. It was absolutely stupendous at how they told this story. And you really, you already hated JJ. Now you really hated JJ. And damn you, Barry Windham, for turning on Lex Luger. And then Lex Luger came out and said, I'll tell you this much right now. I'm going to point with my thumb some more and tell you the shirt's hot.
That's a weird affectation he had. And he didn't close his hand all the way.
Never.
His fingers were like this while he's pointing.
Always. Go back and watch it. It's hilarious. Anyway,
I will say one thing for guys out there watching the show. All this is available on YouTube. It's not watermarked by the WWE or the NWA. It's all available on YouTube. You type in Windham turns heel on Luger, and a video pops up. It's probably about a half hour long where Jim Ross and J.J. Dillon are standing in front of a black screen at the top of the hour when the show starts, and Dillon is explaining the whole process of what happened the week before to Jim Ross. And you see the match. They have the entire match. They have all the activity backstage and everything leading up to it. And then Barry Windham comes out in his jeans and his burgundy Izod golf shirt with a nice blazer over top of it. He's got to look as horseman-y as possible because they all wore blazers when they were on their off time.
And like Chris said, this all eventually led to the four Horsemen and JJ in the War Games match against them. All of us did, but continue.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I saw that this morning while I was having my bourbon and eggs, and it was a fantastic treat to see all this. It brought back memories, like I said. I'm glad you turned me on this because yesterday I even said to you, I'm feeling a little blasé about the topic of this show. But hey, it was fantastic.
And
I stand corrected, Don Wayne.
Here's the next point that I wanted to make, because a month later, Barry Windham, he declares on the show, I'm entering this tournament for the U.S. title. A month later, they have the house show in Texas where he wins the U.S. title. The next week, all 4 horsemen show up wearing all the big gold titles. The only one missing was the TV title. That was the only one they didn't hold. Now, they had the TV title and they still had the U.S. Tag Team Championships at the time. So they had some other belts, which, by the way, if you go back and watch this era of Jim Crockett, they legitimately had the best tag teams in the world. They had so many great tag teams. They really did.
WWE couldn't hold a candle. They couldn't hold a candle to them.
The WWE has just never put the emphasis on tag team wrestling. They'd have 2 or 3 good tag teams at a time, but that's as far as it went. Like, that was it. You weren't getting any more than that.
Right.
And it's still that way today. I mean, hell, 2 guys that aren't even a team, they're just in the same outfit, are the unified tag team champions. They're not a true team. They're just 2 dudes. Because they just don't seem to care about it. And tag team wrestling, when it's done right, can be absolutely tremendous, man. It can be some of the best wrestling that you get. So all 4 guys are standing there a month later, holding their belts, and JJ's crowing about how you can hate us, but just like diamonds, the 4 horsemen is forever. And I'm going to ask you this. This is my favorite incarnation of the 4 horsemen. This is when I think they were at their apex. I thought everybody in the group fit. I thought they all looked the part. I thought they all acted the part. You had the big, tough Texan, the tag team dynamics, and the world champ who was just an out of the town man, just out about town man. They fit each other so well in this role. I always get told, well, the original Andersons were the best. I never liked Ole.
I think that.
See, so you're the only guy.
That iteration of the 4 Horsemen with Ole Anderson, I adored. I love those guys because they looked like a couple of barroom brawlers, the Andersons did. And they're paired up with 2 suave, bon vivant men about town, Blanchard and Flair. And it was classic. Classic.
See, I think this is the best role Tully ever had in the company because he was trying to be Ric Flair and he wasn't Ric Flair. Like he was trying to be. This made Tully what he really was, which was a shit heel. He was a cheater. That's what made Tully so great. The whole I've got $1,000 robes and all this stuff, that never sat well with me with Tully. I always thought of him more of a shitbox guy. So that's just me. So you were an Ole guy, huh?
Okay. What's a shitbox guy?
Well, shit in a box, and you tell me, and just walk around with it. That's a shitbox guy.
What goes on up there in Virginia? That's all I want to know.
Hey, look, man, just don't ever stop
shitting in boxes.
Fire. Hey, look, at least it's not in San Francisco where it's in the streets.
That's true. Keep it contained. Own up to it, carry it around with you.
And this leads me to another question of you.
Sure.
See, Larry knows this cat's got a shit box.
Absolutely.
Exactly. See, he gets it.
Absolutely. I got one right behind my chair.
Out of all the heel turns in history, right? Out of all of them.
Sure.
Where do you rank this one? That's a hot question. I know that's a loaded question.
Dude, it's like so many heel turns. It's so many heel turns.
Yeah, but there's only a few that really stand out in my mind.
Look, if you went top 10, if you took 10 heel turns, the 10 greatest heel turns of all time, I would have to put this at like an 8 or a 7.
An 8?
Yes.
Okay, I've got to hear your list.
I never really thought about it to compile a list. I know Michaels turning on Jannetty would be in there.
Okay, you think? Okay, so
I think that's greater than this.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why it's not. Neither one of those guys was a main eventer at the time, and they weren't on the main stage. They were mid-carders. Barry Windham was on the main stage. Mm-hmm. He was in the big time. Mm-hmm. He was fighting for the world championships. He was fighting for the world titles. He was in the biggest faction at the time. In my opinion, I'm going to ask that question next, but this was bigger because you never seen someone turn on their partner while they were a champion. He was a champion and said, I don't need it and I don't want it and I'm out. But go ahead. Keep going.
I think you would have to include in the modern era Rollins turning on the rest of his brothers in the Shield.
That was a good one. I'll give you that.
That was a good one. Didn't see that coming.
I'm not putting it above this one, though.
No.
If you're going to ask me top 3 heel turns of all time, Hogan turning heel is 1A in my book. That's one with a bullet.
That's number one.
Yes, that's number one.
That's number one because it was so monumental. It changed the face of the wrestling business. It was a guy that kids worshipped, and he's basically shat all over him by turning heel. Number one.
Number 2 for me is this one. This is number 2 in my book. This is the second biggest heel turn of all time.
Wow.
I don't even have Shawn Michaels at number 3. I've got Paul Orndorff pile driving Hogan on television as number 3 because they were friends.
I would even put that in the top 5.
Okay. How many people showed up for that match that was untelevised again? Because don't forget, you weren't watching it. I get that. But how many people showed up? Do you remember that?
Close to 70,000.
Close to 70,000 to watch Orndorff fight Hogan on a non-televised event, non-pay-per-view event.
Right.
That's why it was so big, because Paul Orndorff was his friend at the time. They're buddies.
Now we're getting into a totally different show now. We could do a whole show on the top 10 heel turns of all time, which would be a great Flashback Friday.
We might have to sometime.
We might have to do that next week.
Might have to. Was okay, so you've given me your favorite. What's the worst Horseman faction ever? I think we're both going to have the same answer.
Oh, it's got to be any iteration of the Horsemen that includes a man named Paul Roma.
There we go. That's it. Why in the hell was that a thing?
He was a pretty boy. He was a pretty boy. He was ripped. They tried to make him the next Lex Luger, is what they tried to do. They tried to have a good-looking kid, chiseled out of granite, be a superstar by inserting him into the heel faction. And it didn't work because he looked like $1 million. He looked like $1 million, but his charisma value was 39 cents.
It really was. When he joined, I remember thinking, watching it live, I was like, are you shitting me right now? This is terrible. This is god-awful. And the worst part about this 4 Horsemen faction that we're talking about right now in Barry Windham, it was over with later that year. It was gone. I think October that year. That year, I think Arn and Tully left and went to the WWF as the Brainbusters.
Yeah, in and out. What could have been there? What could have been? What could have been?
Dude, you're not lying. It was
with
so
the Brainbusters in the WWF. They were managed by Bobby Heenan.
Yes. I mean, they went from one great manager to another. I mean, just landing in gold everywhere.
And one failed coke test. Scuttled the ship.
Did the whole thing from him coming back to WCW. I always felt like Tully got the raw end of the deal on that one, but that's just me.
I think Arn got the raw end of the deal on that. Because
he totally got shit-canned.
They both got shit-canned. I would have kept Arn. I would have paired him up with somebody else in the WWA. I would have paired him with Kurt Hennig.
Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson.
That back then, when you said "scissor me, daddy,"
dude,
that's what happened back then. You really got the scissors.
You went to the ER.
Yes. Right. Well, sometimes nowadays, if you say "scissor me, daddy," you'll wind up in the ER.
This is true too. So that was what I had to say about this show. I was really excited to talk about it. Watching it back brought back all the memories. I love this part of wrestling history. I loved everything about this whole heel turn. Oh, yeah, the other part about the show I forgot to mention, when they rode off in the limousine, Barry Windham held the Midnight Mariner's mask out the window as they drove off into the night. I forgot to mention that.
Beautiful, beautiful touch. I forgot about that.
That's how you end a wrestling program.
Now, think about how Barry Windham climbed the heights of professional wrestling back then and fell just as fast as he climbed.
I mean, gone, dude, in a blink of an eye.
Gone. He even got locked up when he was out of NWA, WCW. He got locked up for stalking an old girlfriend. He got picked up by the WWF, and the gimmick they gave him,
pal.
He's the stalker, pal.
Jesus, dude. That's his gimmick. It's what he does.
He was part of the new Blackjacks with John Bradshaw Layfield.
And that guy, you talk about having a career nobody remembers being, long. Layfield wrestled forever, man. Who would have ever thought that guy would have become the WWE champion? Who would have ever
John
seen
Hawk,
that
Justin Hawk Bradshaw.
Those were lean years for the
Blackjack
WWE.
Bradshaw, Blackjack Windham. That's what they were called.
The APA. People forget he was in the APA.
Yes, the APA. But I was talking about with Barry Windham. But
okay.
What about Kendall Windham? The Windham that he never really made it.
He never really made it. No.
Never really made it. Well, he made it to the big house. Him and his father made it to the big house. Him and his father got busted for $500,000 worth of fake 20s. They got
if you're going to go big, go big. That's all I can say.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
I got to give him a lot of credit. Kendall Windham had a lot of balls because he tried to get back into wrestling.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He went right back into wrestling after that when he got out of the big house. It never made it, though. He was too skinny. He was as tall as his brother, Barry, but he was too fit, too skinny. He was also the Widowmaker. Yep, absolutely.
Yep. And, well, here's the thing. Barry Windham had a lot of stints in the WWE. That was one of the problems in his career, is that he bounced back and forth from the WWE to WCW multiple times. People forget, he was in the WWE in the early 80s.
Vince liked him.
I mean, he had everything you would want in a champion. He was tall, blonde, built, and then genetics took over and he stopped working out. And it just one of those deals. I mean, the family genetics eventually went out with everybody, pal.
Yeah, pal. Look at Spivey. Didn't he replace Spivey in that tag team with Rotundo?
No, Spivey got replaced by Undertaker, actually.
No. I'm talking about the WWF.
Oh.
When it was Mike Rotundo and Dan Spivey. When Dan Spivey had almost a full head of bleach blonde, mulleted hair. And they were what was their U.S. Express?
Was it? Let me look that up.
Yeah. Look that up real quick.
So Dan Spivey,
as I smoke my piece of driftwood, I got him.
Dan Spivey got replaced a lot in a lot of different companies.
Dan Spivey was a great mechanic in the ring, a great wrestler, and he was a scary man.
The American Express. The American
Express. Yep.
Left-hand Dan. He was also in the American Starship. Dan Spivey and Stan Hansen and the Skyscrapers, the very short-lived Skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he got hurt and the Undertaker had to step in. Mark Callis.
Mark Callis. Player.
He said he'll never draw a dime.
They were managed by Teddy Long. Player.
Good times.
Good times back then, man. What an era when guys knew how to work and they came up the right way. But I heard in a shoot interview, Tully Blanchard and James Romero from Wrestling Shoot Interviews. He's the guy who hosts the
I've seen him.
Dutch Mantel podcast. James Romero, I've watched a lot of his stuff. He always asks the great questions. He's got that Chris Van Vliet, boy next door kind of charm about him. Good looking kid. Ask all the right questions. He's an aficionado of professional wrestling. He talked to Tully Blanchard, and they distilled it down to the reason why the modern day wrestlers are the way they are, the young kids, is because the car rides are eliminated.
Yeah. I have heard that from so many different interviews, is that the knowledge base that they used to absorb on those 200-mile treks from town to town is just gone. There's nobody there to talk to them as a peer-to-peer type moment. It's all the coaches that are talking to them, and it's just not the same. So exactly. it's a different entity entirely now in what they do today. Those car rides, I feel like they should be brought back. It's just awful that they don't have them anymore. There's not as many shows anymore.
5 or 6 guys crammed into a Olds Cutlass Supreme or a Buick LeSabre back then, a big ass, a bench seats in the front. Guys jammed in there, a couple cases of beer. They're drinking, driving down the road, doing shots of Jack and maybe some of the medicine if you're driving with Sheiky Baby. And
speaking of Sheiky Baby, have you ever heard Kevin Nash tell the story when he got in the car with Dutch Mantel, Sid Vicious, and the Iron Sheik?
They went to a bar. They had a little shitty hotel, and they went to a bar, and there was a guy there who was blocking. Sid was driving, and the guy was blocking the driveway to go past into the parking lot of this shitty bar. He was in this big ass pickup truck, and Sid got out. He was blowing his horn. Sid got out and told the guy, "Get the fuck out of the road. I want to park my car." So he went and he parked his car, and the three of them went inside, and Dutch and Sid are getting drinks. The Sheik disappeared. The Sheik's on the other side of the bar. Eventually, they found him. He's got some chick, and she's like lifted her top up for the Sheik to. He's checking to see what melons were ripe, if you know what I'm saying.
My Lord!
And when they went outside, the entire car was destroyed. The tires were flat, the windows were broken out, the windshield was shattered. So they walked back to their hotel, which wasn't far away. Their motel, I should say. And the motel, I think they had one bed. And Dutch said, "I'm not getting in a bed with them." I think Dutch slept on the floor. But the Sheik, he brought the girl back to the hotel room, to the motel.
Of course he did. Of course I did, Bubba.
Yeah, Bubba. Yeah, hey, Bubba.
No, the story that Kevin Nash has told, and it's his story.
Is this a different story?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It must be a different time.
It talks about how they go to the gym one day to work out. He's like, I'm in the gym last. I had to get some stuff out of the car. He says, I walk in there, and there's Dutch Mantell sitting at the front of the gym, not lifting a damn weight, reading the Wall Street Journal. And he walks in the gym, there's Sid Vicious in front of a mirror, curling weights. Just, he looks over at the Sheik, and he's legit got the clubs going in the middle of the gym, waving the goddamn clubs over his head. And that's when Kevin Nash said, I had an epiphany. I am really in the wrestling business. This is professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. They're all crazy as hell. So that story cracked me up. It's one of his better stories. Makes me laugh. I listen to that 2 or 3 times a year.
Have you ever seen the documentary called The Sheik?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. The one where he gets the crack by.
What's that?
The crack by.
Yes. The subject, if you guys haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. And it was on several streaming services, but I believe it's still available free on YouTube. I think it's the whole documentary. But it's called The Sheik, but it is the Iron Sheik. I think because it was a televised product, a film product, they couldn't call it the Iron Sheik because I believe the WWE holds a copyright still as a Legends contract for the phrase the Iron Sheik.
They may.
Yeah. And just the stuff he would do. He had all the weights out in the backyard, the Persian clubs. The weights were all rusted, and he would go out there every day. Still, with the bad wheels, when he could lift them, he could go out there and work out in his backyard. It would look like a shithole, but...
I humble you.
I humble you, Bubba.
I humble you, Bubba.
Just, if you want a good laugh, just type in Iron Sheik interview on YouTube, and you'll laugh.
Any one of them. Any one of them.
Dude.
When he goes off on Hulk Hogan, it's just insane.
A couple alcoholic beverages, maybe a left-handed cigarette. You sit there and just watch that. You'll piss yourself laughing. Unbelievable.
He's out of his mind.
When he says to Mean Gene Okerlund, yes, Gene, you're an intelligent Jew businessman. I understand. and Gene's he's holding the microphone going.
All right, pal. We're going to have to start over. So, that concludes the Barry Windham episode today. Bottles, have you got anything in mind for next week's Flashback Friday?
I think we should do the top heels. The top heel turns. How you feel about that? You're not feeling that, are you?
We could do it, but I feel like we could rip through that in 10 minutes.
I know what we'll do. We're going to bring it up a little bit. We're going to bring it up a little bit towards our year. The Montreal Screwjob.
Oh, my God, dude. Are you shitting me?
No.
All right.
The Montreal Screwjob.
Everybody's got to know that, but we'll do it. Everybody else got a Montreal Screwjob story. We might as well, too.
And we can touch upon... Yeah, Sheik and Stern was unbelievable. Yeah, I understand, Mr. Howard, but you make me so goddamn mad.
That's what put him back on the map. That's what put him back on the map.
Oh yeah.
That's what made him famous
well, no,
again.
actually, when his manager at the time, Eric Sims, hooked him up with RF video, and they would do, at the time, shoot videos and press them to DVD, and you could buy them online on RF video. And he was famous for those shoot interviews just going off. So they showed some of those to Howard, and Howard put them on the show. And the rest is history. It's fantastic.
Chris says we ain't got to do any research for that Montreal screw job. That thing's been done to death. Everybody's got their take
we might
on
not do that then. We might not do that then.
I got one.
What you got?
It's cherry picking, but I got one.
What is it?
Dusty Rhodes gets turned on by Ric Flair in the start of the Four Horsemen. We're already on the Four Horsemen topic. We can stay in this lane for another week.
There's a treasure trove of goodness in the NWA
there really
annals.
There really is.
Yes,
that one was big because they damn near killed him.
What about when the Road Warriors turned on Dusty Rhodes?
That was
and put the spike in his eyeball, and Dusty lost his job because of that.
That's one of the worst angles in wrestling history. We can talk about it. We'll have a little bit of a talk this week.
That's another guy. The interviews were just fantastic. Well, we went back to Chicago. You guys beat us up. 5 of you put us out. We weren't even at a week.
We will discuss.
Dino Danger, Snackle, and Death. Dead men don't make money. Same old story. Tell it, Paul.
Well, dude, it was so good. Just
oh my God. And Ellering was standing there with a Wall Street Journal and just smack it in his hand.
Yes.
And his palms were sweaty. So while Ellering's talking, you can see the print of the Wall Street Journal in his hands while he's talking. I'm the proclamator of bad intentions, Ellering would say. And then Animal would talk.
And then it would always end the same way.
Oh,
Tell him, Hawk.
God.
Well,
Jimmy Hart, you ain't nothing but a stack of dimes with a mouth on top.
God, it was good. And yes, Chris, when the Horseman broke the leg in the cage, that's what we're talking about. That might have to be the one. I watched that. That's another one. I watch some of these every year.
Moving up a little bit, what about the formation of the Dangerous Alliance? What a stable that was.
I would really have to do my homework on that one. I'd have to do some serious homework on that one. It was.
Paulie Dangerously, managing Steve Austin, Larry Zbyszko, Arn Anderson,
Bobby
Eaton, Medusa.
Wasn't Rick Rude in there too?
Rick Rude was in there, but he left. I think he went to WWE again, didn't he?
And got rich. I'm rich, bitch!
And he got rich.
Lords of London, I'm calling for my money.
Just so many. What a wealth of history.
It is.
What a wealth of history. That's why I love the NWA back then.
And they screwed it up. They found a way. Let's get RoboCop. Okay.
But I will say, the guy who played RoboCop at the, what was that? Capital Combat, I believe it was.
I think so.
Capital Combat. Sting was in a steel cage and he bent the bars. That was the actual stuntman for the RoboCop movies.
Dude, I've got one. I've actually got one a lot of people have forgotten about. I think I've got it.
What is it?
Ric Flair and his return to in-ring action on WCW when he faced Vader for the World Heavyweight Championship.
As a face.
As a face.
As a face.
As the Ric Flair, for the first time in his career in the NWA, was the heavy underdog and had to fight from underneath against the man called Vader.
A lot of interviews at his house.
Interviews at his house. The car ride interview when he rode there.
Ashley Flair. The Charlotte Flair.
A young Ashley Flair.
That
might be the one. That might be the one.
That could be it.
Because that was a good storyline, man. That was one of those that when I saw it happen, I was like, is Flair's the face? Flair can't win this? They're saying he can't win? That might be it. I think we found something there.
It could very well be.
Go back before Ric Flair was one of the most.
What about the? Hang on a second.
Uh-oh, that's not a cigar.
What about the? hang on a second.
What we got here?
What about in that era? If you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to do that. I don't know. What's that say? Technically, Ric Flair beat Barry Windham at Beach Blast 93 for the NWA title before Vader at Starrcade.
Correct, but this was the WCW title.
We've got
by then the NWA was gone.
That was wrestling savant Chris Stikelether. Everybody,
my man's got his shit together. I'll give him that.
What a mind for all the minutiae of professional wrestling.
He's in there to win it, buddy.
And before the year is over, we have to go over the best. I don't know whether we do it on this show or we do it on the main show on Thursdays. The best of 2023.
I think so. I think we got to get a list together where we talk about your top 5 moments of this year, top 5 wrestlers, something along those lines. Anyway, that's all I got today for the Flashback Show, Bottles.
That's all I got too. It's not to mention the modern era, but it ties into this. When you look at the greats from those days and what they've turned into now, Arn Anderson, he's got a hand that is shot.
It's unusable. He can't use it.
Unusable. Well, no, he could carry 4 Heinekens in his hand. I saw him do that. I told you that
You
story.
did see that. You did see that, yes.
I went to a WCW show at the Baltimore Arena, the Baltimore Civic Center at the time, and we got tipped off that all the wrestlers were staying at the Marriott Hotel, which is close to the airport, BWI Airport in Linthicum, Maryland. And we went there to the sports bar, the Marriott, and I walked in, and it was WCW heaven. And the first person I saw, the first group of people I saw were the Nitro Girls. They were all at an elevated bar table, where you sit on the high stools and it's elevated. And in the mix of between Che and Kimberly Page, they had their arms around the GOAT interviewer of all time, Mean Gene Okerlund. As I'm walking to the bar, he said, "Look at the head on that guy." I looked over at him. He goes, "Hey, how you doing, pal? You going to the show today?" I said, Yeah, Gene. Hey, how you doing? And he was making a few jokes. He had 4 empty glasses, martini glasses in front of him. He had the 5th one in his hand. He was sucking them down because his vodka was his choice of the alcoholic beverage. And he regaled the Nitro Girls with all his humor, and myself included. I sort of forgot that, my second ex-wife was alone on a table in the back of the place. And he was just making small talk with me. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Hey, listen, there's Kurt Hennig. He owes me $20. I got to go." And he walked off. I don't know whether that was his thing, that was his way of saying,
that says I got to get out of here.
Squirt. I got to get out of here. I got to take a squirt.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a old-fashioned from Che back in the men's room. But, that Nitro Girls were all hot to trot back then. It was unbelievable. And then I walk over to the bar, and I'm getting a drink from the bartender, and there's Terry Taylor and a couple of the production guys sitting at the bar, and Kevin Sullivan is sitting in the middle with flip-flops on in February, and OP corduroy shorts, and a blue button-down Oxford shirt. It looked like the floor of a movie theater. He spilled all kinds of shit all over his Oxford shirt. And he's got a cigar. Back in those days, you could smoke in those bars up in Maryland. And he's got the cigar in his mouth, much like this. And he's like, got a navy blue cap on, much like my own, with some kind of like fishing logo on it. "I'm telling you right now, brother, he's not like his old man. He's not like his old man, brother. He's killing the tag teams, brother. He's killing the tag teams, brother."
And that
he was referring to Vince McMahon. He was referring to Vince McMahon in the WWF at the time, killing the tag team business because he didn't like tag teams.
Still at it today. He's still at it today.
Still at it today. And I get a drink, and as I start to walk away, I look back, and Sting and Luger, Sting without the makeup, and they're busted out in their T-shirts, their their neon colored T-shirts and their Zubaz pants. Remember those things?
Yeah.
Zubaz pants and their ankle high Nike basketball shoes. Coming out of the kitchen because they hated the fans. The entire front of the hotel where
Isn't
the lobby
weird?
is.
Isn't that weird?
The entrance, yes, it is very, very strange because those people are responsible for those guys.
Yeah, they're making you millionaires.
Well, Luger, like I said, Luger hated the fans, and Sting was riding with Luger. They were good friends. Their wives were good friends.
He hates peeling shrimp. If you didn't know,
who?
Lex Luger. Lex Luger. I shit you not. There's a story out there. Lex Luger's at the bar one night and paid a guy to peel a shrimp.
He didn't want to get the old bay under his fingernails.
I shit you not. He paid a guy to peel his shrimp.
Jesus Christ!
I've heard that story multiple times. My man's a
back in those days, folks. Douchebag Lex Luger was not like the Lex Luger in a wheelchair, God-fearing young man, old man today.
Not the guy that wakes up every day.
He says, "Thank you, Lord, for another day, another day above ground." But I look back over, and those guys come in their Zubaz pants, and they're just like, because the locker room was divided, really, in real life, into different factions.
Yep.
Over in the corner, in a big-ass booth, you had Conan, Nash, Hall, and whoever they were running with at the time were in a corner holding court with a couple of ring rats. You had another table with the Luchadors and Eddie Guerrero. The Luchadors, I recognize a couple of them. You had Rey Mysterio with no mask. You had Juventud Guerrera and Psychosis with no masks. Sitting amongst the other Luchadors, like El Dandy, of course, Silver King, they didn't wear a mask. I recognize those guys right away. But I just looked around, and as I turned to go back to the table to my second ex-wife, I saw Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit walk in. And Chris Benoit was so jacked. He's a little guy, but he was so jacked. He couldn't put his arms straight down by his side. He would say, "Hey, buddy, can you reach in my pocket and get my car keys?" That's what he'd have to say to people because he couldn't get into his pockets. His arms were so muscular. It was a surreal night just to see all these people.
Right.
And as I'm sitting there with my second ex-wife, I see Arn Anderson walking by, and she goes, "Oh, Mr. Anderson, oh." She had the 90s hair blown out, and she had, a couple buttons on a blouse and that sort of thing. And Arn Anderson came by, and he was an agent back then for WCW. And in the dummy hand, the hand that wouldn't function. So this must
have been late 90s, right?
Yes, sir. In the dummy hand, he had 1, 2, 3, 4 Heineken bottles in that dummy hand. He could grip that. And he had a Heineken he was drinking. And Arn Anderson talked to us for like 15, almost 20 minutes about, you guys go to the show? You like the show? Blah, blah, blah. He's talking about the Baltimore Arena, how him and Blanchard used to wrestle there all the time, and blah, 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 all about his career, about the fans of Baltimore. He was talking about his neck problems and all that stuff. Yeah, he works backstage, and he says, I gotta go get these beers over to the fellas back there before they get warm and they get pissed off at me. Good talking to you people. You're nice folks. And he walked away. And he didn't have to do that.
No, that's awesome, man.
He didn't have to do that. That's awesome. Sting and Luger avoided the fans by coming through the back door of the place. And a guy who was trying to get into the bar but couldn't, because he spent time with the fans, and I'm talking 2 hours out front of that bar, signing shit. No.
Okay, who?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Bill Goldberg.
That I can believe, actually, especially if it's kids. Goldberg goes out of his way to find kids. He really does.
There were
Goldberg
people
goes
there
out of his way to find kids.
And there were a lot of kids out front.
Yeah. Goldberg, that guy... people talk a lot of shit about Goldberg, but there's one thing he does. He goes out of his way to try to meet every kid that's at a show. Like, he's
top notch.
I've seen it happen because we'll get to the security I did one time at a show. I'll talk about that sometime. But yeah, it was absolutely.
I'd love to hear that story.
That guy's great. That guy's great. Well,
give me a little nugget. Give me a little security nugget. Give me a little.
Scott Steiner kicked in the door backstage where I was sitting guarding at, and yelled at me, "Give me a chair!" Holy shit, dude!
So it was quiet as a church.
It's just me. It's the back entrance, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna be back here the whole show. I'm not gonna see shit. And I mean, he literally kicked the door in like he was looking for something. Like I thought I was gonna be on TV. I thought this was some shit on TV. He was so mad. Give me a chair! What? And it can't have them pussy ass cushions. Okay. The fuck out of here, man.
Jesus
My
Christ.
ass went trotting down the hallway looking for a chair.
I think my bowels would have moved if Scott Steiner opened and kicked the door up and started screaming at me.
My man was hot. So we'll talk about that sometime. Anyway, I appreciate everybody for joining. Yeah, that's a good. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go watch some SmackDown. I'm going to see my man come on. I'm ready for tonight's show.
You heard about the match? The main event?
Don't hear it. Don't hear it. No spoilers. No spoilers. I've avoided it all day for a reason.
I'm not going to tell you that what happens because I don't know.
Shit off. Take us home, Johnny. Like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. A wise man once said we need the money.
We do. Like and subscribe, blah, 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 all that good shit.
Until next week, Gordon Soley saying so long from the Sunshine State.